I know you've heard it everywhere from everybody that video games are bad for you and they can even be very bad on your mental health. They lead to violent behavior, they lead to bad decisions, and you are just not going to be in a great state of mind at all if you're playing video games. That's what we have all heard time and time again, and yet I think as time goes on, we've really been challenging that notion very much now, where people are really taking the challenging of this notion serious enough to conduct actual research on it. Are these claims correct? Are video games bad on your mental health? Now, there was an article written in something called Nature Human Behaviour. This was research done in Japan from 2020 to 2022, conducted by 5 universities, and they actually conducted this study on almost 100,000 Japanese residents. They were aged 10 to 69, and the whole point of the research was to see, how do video games, how do they affect the mental health of people playing them? Now, a very unique part of this research is that it is, or at least it's claimed to be anyway, the first to establish a causal relationship between video gaming and mental health well-being using actual real-life data. Yeah, I don't know exactly how this works, but apparently in this research they actually conducted their collection of their data by game console lotteries during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I don't exactly know what they mean. When they say game console lotteries, I don't know if this just means like a random number selector of anybody that has game consoles. I don't really know. But it looks like they did this research on 2 consoles, the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 5. Now, here's the main takeaway for both consoles. There was a positive link that was established between playing video games and the mental health well-being of a person. In other words, it was found in this study that playing video games actually had a positive effect on mental health. It actually benefited mental health. Now, specifically, the Nintendo Switch was found to have a larger positive impact on mental health, whereas people who use the PlayStation 5 had an increase in their life satisfaction. So yeah, obviously this really goes against the grain, kind of against the norm of maybe what society in general would view as, how video games actually affect a person. Most people, I think, would view video games as a negative experience in terms of one's mental health, when in reality that is just not the case. Now, obviously too much of one thing can be a problem. Obviously, if you're playing games 16 hours a day, yeah, it's probably causing some sort of a problem there. But it would seem in this case, with this specific research, gaming actually had a positive impact on mental health. Now, it's also worth mentioning, I remember looking up some research a few months ago about how it was found that the type of video games that one plays can have a much different effect on one's, I think it was happiness or life satisfaction. Basically talking about these games like Minecraft or even like The Sims that kind of are just sandboxes of sorts and kind of just make you be creative. That's the whole point of the game. Yeah, those games seem to affect people in the best way. But in this case specifically, it would seem that, yeah, for both the PS5 and the Switch, things are looking good, and overall, your mental health is not negatively impacted in any way by playing games on these consoles, or at least according to this research. Now, one criticism about the research that is worth pointing out is that, hey, this was taken, during a specific, unique time, in that it was taken during COVID-19. Obviously, one could make the realistic argument that video games were a sort of much-needed escape during that period of time, and they probably did have more of a likelihood of increasing one's happiness or mental health well-being at a time where we didn't really have much else to turn to. So I think it would be interesting to see if these same 5 Japanese universities would eventually, and maybe they are currently doing this, but I would love to see them do the same study, but just at a more current time period where the world is not being affected by a pandemic and there's not a lockdown, because I think that would also show that, hey, there's still a positive link with video games and mental health. Times are definitely changing and notions are definitely changing. I know I'm not the first person to ever point out that, hey, maybe video games aren't so bad after all. No, people are definitely changing their viewpoint on this, I think, but it's really cool to see research come out that really not only supports this, but apparently for the first time uses real-life data to establish an actual relationship between video games and mental health. It's getting more official and more factual that video games are, well, they're not as bad as what they used to be perceived as.